The female soldier stood silently in the crowded military training ground, her eyes sharp but calm. Around her, other soldiers sneered and whispered, doubting her abilities. "She's just a rookie," one grunted. "Look at her, think she can handle real combat?" Another mocked. She ignored them, tightening her grip on her rifle, the weight familiar in her hands. Suddenly, the general arrived, walking slowly through the ranks. The crowd straightened. She shifted nervously, wondering if she'd finally be noticed. The morning sun cast a pale, even light across the sprawling army base, its concrete and steel structures stark against the pale blue sky. The air was thick with the scent of dust and sweat, mingling with the faint metallic tang of weaponry. Rows of barracks lined the training ground, their dull green paint chipped from years of use, while heavy military vehicles sat idle nearby, engines silent but ready. She could feel the rough canvas of her uniform against her skin, the slight stiffness from the morning starch lingering, but the coolness of the early day helped steady her nerves. Her boots pressed firmly into the cracked asphalt as she stood, among a sea of seasoned soldiers whose confident postures contrasted sharply with the unease in her chest. The murmurs from nearby ranks swirled around her, a low buzz of derision and disbelief. She caught snippets of their words, sharp and cutting. Her jaw tightened instinctively. The rifle in her hands was heavy, but the cold steel grip was familiar, grounding her in this world that often felt hostile. The soldiers' laughter and side glances felt like needles, but she refused to let it show. Her eyes scanned the crowd, noting the casual arrogance etched into their faces, the ease with which they dismissed her. Every muscle in her body was alert, ready for whatever challenge came next. Then, the distinct sound of heavy boots echoed through the open space. Conversations halted abruptly as the general entered the training ground, his presence commanding instant respect. His uniform was impeccable, the medals on his chest catching the sunlight briefly. Soldiers snapped to attention, their chatter replaced by a tense silence. She straightened her back, heart pounding in her chest, feeling the weight of every gaze as the general's steady eyes swept across the ranks. Her breath caught slightly. Was this the moment she'd been waiting for? Would he see past the rumors and doubts? The general's footsteps slowed as he neared her position. Around her, the crowd seemed to hold its breath, waiting for his judgment. She swallowed, her fingers tightening around the rifle's cold metal. The world narrowed to just her, the general, and the silent challenge hanging between them. As the general approached her, he stopped abruptly. His sharp eyes fell upon the long scars, tracing down her arms, faint but undeniable, marks of battles survived and endured. The murmurs that had filled the air moments before evaporated instantly, replaced by a heavy, respectful silence. The smell of sweat and dust mingled with the faint, metallic scent of his polished boots as he stood close, observing the woman before him with a new intensity. She stood tall, though inside a flurry of emotions churned, pride mixed with a flicker of apprehension, the steady rise and fall of her chest barely betraying the storm beneath. Her gaze met the general's without wavering, a quiet defiance shining in her eyes. The weight of years spent proving herself pressed on her shoulders, yet she refused to shrink away now. "Tell me your story," the general said quietly, his voice low but heavy with unexpected respect. His tone carried a softness unusual for a man of his rank, hinting at the gravity of what he saw etched on her skin. The sunlight caught the edges of his sharp features, casting natural shadows that revealed the lines of experience on his face. Around them, soldiers stood rigid, watching the interaction unfold like a silent audience, the distant clatter of boots and the occasional whistle from a training officer created a backdrop to the tense moment. But none dared interrupt. Even the birds seemed to hush, as if the very air recognized the significance. She inhaled deeply, the scent of leather and canvas filling her nostrils, mingling with the dry earth beneath her feet. Slowly she began recounting the battles, the scars earned in moments when survival was the only goal. Each word carried the weight of memories, the sounds of distant gunfire, the biting cold of night watches, the sting of pain that never fully faded. Her voice was steady, but beneath it lay a current of hard-earned resilience. The general listened intently, his eyes never leaving her face. Occasionally he nodded, the respect in his demeanor growing with every detail. When she finished, a moment of silence stretched between them, heavy, profound, unspoken understanding passing in that quiet space. For the first time since arriving at the base, the female soldier felt the shift, a recognition that went beyond appearances and gossip. In that instant, she was no longer invisible. The general's gaze held something fierce and validating, and the battlefield scars on her arms were no longer just marks of pain, but badges of honor. Later in the briefing room, the atmosphere was tense but charged with a newfound respect. The general stood before a room full of officers, his posture rigid and commanding as he recounted her deeds. The space was utilitarian, plain metal chairs lined up against pale walls, fluorescent lights buzzing softly overhead, the faint scent of old paper and coffee lingering in the air. A large map of the conflict zones was pinned behind him, its edges curled and worn. His voice was steady, carrying a rare mixture of admiration and surprise. She's faced combat zones no one expected her to survive. He began, eyes scanning the room, making sure every officer absorbed the weight of his words. The men and women before him shifted uneasily, the earlier skepticism replaced with grudging acknowledgement. The room hummed with the quiet sound of uniforms adjusting, papers rustling, and pens tapping on desks. Seated near the front, the female soldier listened quietly, her expression calm yet fiercely determined. The faint scar on her jawline caught the light as she tilted her head slightly, a subtle reminder of battles fought beyond the ones just described. Her hands rested on her lap, fingers flexing occasionally, betraying a flicker of tension beneath her composed exterior. Around her, the officers exchanged glances, some avoiding eye contact, others nodding slowly as the general's words sank in. The air felt heavier, as if the truth of her experiences had shifted the very dynamic of the room. The scent of polished boots mixed with the faint musk of the uniforms, grounding the scene in military order and discipline. The general's tone grew firmer as he concluded, emphasizing that underestimating her was a mistake no one could afford. Her scars tell stories of survival and courage. It's time we stopped doubting her. As the briefing ended, a subtle change rippled through the room. The female soldier's presence was no longer just tolerated. It was acknowledged, respected. Officers approached her with cautious nods, their earlier smirks replaced by thoughtful expressions. She met their gazes steadily, a quiet pride settling in her chest. For the first time, she felt she truly belonged, not as an outsider but as a formidable soldier among them. Outside the window, the training grounds lay bathed in soft daylight, the distant sound of drills echoing faintly, a world where her scars were not just reminders of pain but symbols of strength and resilience. Back on the training ground, the female soldier moved with renewed purpose. The air was crisp and fresh, the scent of damp earth mingling with the faint aroma of gun oil and worn canvas from the surrounding equipment. The sun hung high in the sky, casting a clear, natural light over the base, highlighting the green barracks and rows of parked military vehicles that framed the training area. Her footsteps were steady and measured on the hard-packed dirt path as she ran through the drills, each movement precise and confident. The weight of her rifle felt balanced in her hands, an extension of her own body rather than a burden. Her breath came in controlled rhythm, the cool air filling her lungs and sharpening her focus. Around her, the other soldiers watched in silence. The earlier laughter and mockery had vanished, replaced by cautious curiosity and a growing respect. Some exchanged whispered comments, their eyes occasionally flicking toward her, as if trying to reconcile the image of the determined soldier before them with the doubts they had harbored. The texture of her uniform, tough blend of cotton and nylon, rubbed softly against her skin with every movement, dampening slightly with sweat under the mid-morning sun. The fabric clung to the faint scars on her arms, now clearly visible in the bright light, marking the hard-earned battles that had shaped her. From a distance, the general observed, his gaze steady and approving. A slight nod from him carried more weight than any verbal praise, signaling to the soldiers that this was someone worthy of their attention and respect. The hum of distant engines and the occasional bark of a commanding officer punctuated the quiet determination that filled the space. As she completed her drill, the female soldier allowed herself a brief, satisfied breath. The tension in her shoulders eased just a fraction, replaced by a quiet confidence. The scars that once made others doubt her were now unmistakable badges of survival, etched in her skin and story. No one would doubt her again.